Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kelly Paletta. Today, our topic is unleashing productivity with generative AI. Welcome to our webinar. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Director of Sales and Marketing at eXp Technical. At eXp Technical, we provide IT support to hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses here in the Pacific Northwest. We're your local IT support provider, and our mission is to supercharge your business, make it secure the eXp way. This webinar is one of our commitments to our values, and our values include things like contribute to the community, share knowledge, share success. And in this webinar series, what we do, for those of you that haven't attended before, is that we bring thought leaders, subject matter experts to the attention of the community of local business leaders. And that's what we're going to do today as well. Our vision with that is, even if your path never joins with eXp, you don't ever have to become a client of ours, but we want to provide information that helps empower your business because, so if the region succeeds, we will all succeed together through that. I have just a couple of things to mention before I introduce our guest speaker. I guess one thing I'll say is we have a prepared presentation for you. It's going to be very fast-paced. The good news, this will come up as we go here. The good news is that our guest presenter, Dave Nelson, is allowing us to record this event. And that's fantastic because this is going to be the most visually stimulating presentation you've seen in a long time. And there will be a lot of replay moments that you want to go back and rewind and revisit, or there may be moments that you want to share with others in your organization, whether that's with your executive team, operations professionals, HR, IT. I'm sure there are going to be those moments where you want to play along at home and replay. So we're fortunate that our guest presenter is gracious enough to allow us to record and share that recording. Be patient with me. It takes about a week before I have that available. So you'll get an email from me about a week down the road that's here and introduce our guest speaker. So today joining us is Dave Nelson, and Dave is CEO of Dialog Consulting. And the reason why we invited Dave to our presentation today is because I've attended presentations he's given in the past, and it's obvious that he's much farther on the path on this journey towards adoption of AI than certainly I am, and that many of the people that I know. And we have a common value of share knowledge, share success. Dave is willing to share what he's learned so that we can all succeed. So Dave, I think I want to hand the baton to you, but welcome to our event. Thank you so much for being here. Feel free to speak up when you're ready, and I will just, yield the floor to you to move forward from here.
All right, good. Let's get started here, Kelly. And I'm happy to interact as we go. So if you've got a question, please chat it to Kelly, not to me. I'm chat to all participants if you like. I'm not monitoring the chat as I speak. Kelly will see them and will periodically interrupt me. And anything we don't get to today, we'll give you a process at the end, so we will ultimately answer all of your questions. I'm going to use a virtual studio here today. So here is my virtual worldwide headquarters of Dialog Consulting Group and our presentation, which I've titled Unleashing Productivity with Generative AI. That's what we're going to focus on. And I call this a leadership imperative. Here's our imperative as leaders. Our people have well-polished and practiced processes, and hey, they're happy to show up tomorrow to do what they did today and do it well. And yet this new thing has come along which can significantly improve productivity. So we need to motivate people to explore this new technology and start to look at how they can evolve their processes for greater productivity. I'm going to try to quantify that for you, but that's the imperative. Motivate people to be curious explorers and maybe within 6 to 12 months make some significant changes. Now let's dive in. You see a ton of AI generated images today, but I want to back up to December of 2022. This was one of the first articles that I saw in the morning blog about this thing we call ChatGPT, or generative AI. Good morning. ChatGPT gives an early glimpse at what AI could become. Now, here's the cool thing. This technology, the interface is a chat interface. You already know how to chat, so you already know how to use this. What to do with it, that we got to talk about, but how to use it, if you can chat with a human, you can chat with this bot. I want to take you briefly into the rest of the acronym, so let's talk about the P. This is a neural network that learns very much like we do. It encounters information, it receives positive and negative feedback, mostly from humans. We call this reinforcement learning. And the neural network establishes connections. That is the process of learning. The thing is, it can cover more ground than all of us put together. So it is pre-trained. At the time it was originally released, it had already consumed 175 billion internet words and parameters. It went on in the following March, when it became image capable, to cross over 300 billion. And we have a brand new version of this just in the last 3 weeks as we speak today that reportedly is trained on 1.3 trillion internet words and parameters. So it knows a lot of stuff. And it can cover a lot of ground, which is great because we're in a world of too much information, and that information is doubling annually. How do we use our linear brains in this exponential world? We use this bridge. Now, it doesn't copy or catalog or memorize people's content. It learns from it. And so when you ask it to do something with what we typically call a prompt, it generates new stuff that's never existed before, and it doesn't copyright what it creates. In fact, what it creates is different every time, even with the same prompt. So what it creates is yours. Check it with a plagiarism checker. I like Grammarly, but use what you like. No plagiarism found. So it generates new stuff based on knowing a lot of what's going on out there in the world. Now, a quick experiment just to open your eyes to the possibilities here. This is the center row of 3 rows of students in an innovation and entrepreneurship class. This is part of the MBA program at Wharton, one of our top MBA programs in the country. These students, 200 of them, receive an assignment each year, word for word, what you're reading on the screen. Generate an idea for a new product or service appealing to college students that could be made available for $50 or less. Write it up, do a week from today. And then the professor takes these ideas and puts them into what might be called live market testing. They're published on a website. They invite students from all over Eastern Pennsylvania. I'm coming to you from Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh area today. And they ask them to rate how likely they would be to purchase this product or service if available at the advertised price. And any idea that gets at least a 50% take rate, at least 50% of the people want to buy it, they call that exceptional. Now, out of the 200 ideas submitted this year in this live testing, sort of a typical year 5 rated as exceptional. But what was new this year is, hey, you can ask the same question to ChatGPT with one minor difference, not an idea, but 200 ideas. So it's 200 ideas go head to head, apples to apples with the 200 ideas from the students. They put the ideas from ChatGPT into the same live market testing, and out of its 200 ideas, 35 rated as exceptional. What's going on here? AI can't be creative. Technology can't be creative, right? Well, you got to start to think about that. That's more a question to reconsider. Now, humans are creative in so many ways, dozens of ways. And this is just one form of creativity. But let me try to characterize this one for you. There was a quote back in the 80s. Innovation or creativity is taking two things that already exist and putting them together in a new way. And this form of innovation or creativity, because ChatGPT's library knowledge base is so great, it can see combinations. And this is one of the great promises of AI. It can see combinations that no individual human ever would. Now, in the 80s, of course, we already had music, we already had television. It was Tom Freston who said this and did this when he put together those two into MTV. In that form of creativity, ChatGPT absolutely excels. And I'll also say this. When you and your team engage with this product, with this technology, it drives more creativity as if there is another person in that conversation. More creativity in the world after this. Now, it is generative and it is pre-trained. What's the T? Transformer. I don't want to geek out on the technology today because we're really talking about business applications, but here's what you need to know about transformers. Invented by Google recently, 2017, so this is a pretty new idea. And Google published it. You can read all about it on Cornell University's website. Attention is all you need. That's the name of the paper. But here's the other thing about transformers. It's really about words. If you think about words, they don't necessarily have fixed or deterministic meanings independent of other words. The bank is closed. What came to mind? Some kind of financial institution. It wasn't the word bank. It was the word close that helped you understand what we're talking about here. I could say something else entirely about a bank. It's slippery. We're talking about something else altogether, right? And by the way, thank you, ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion, for these images. Generating images is an important part of this tool because if we can communicate in images, we are, well, reportedly 7 times more effective. So all the transformer did, what the core of the technology is it's able to assign probabilities to words to determine relationships and meaning. People sometimes call this a probabilistic word selector. If you give it some words, it can select the next one. And aren't we sort of the same thing? Probabilistic word selectors. You ask us a question 2 days in a row, we're not going to answer it with exactly the same words every time. And this is the same kind of thing. So in that way, it varies from other forms of technology you've used. It is not deterministic. It is probabilistic. Cool. Now, I would like to use the word transformer in a different way, or at least the root. Transform your business processes. So, which processes? How much productivity gain to expect here? And hey, Goldman Sachs has taken a shot at answering that question. Generative AI could raise global GDP by 7%. We've never seen a single invention in the history of humans with this kind of impact on the world's economy. 2/3 of occupations could be impacted in time, but here's where we're at right now. So we got the 2017 invention, thank you, Google, and we're at 0, down here in the left. In other words, it can do 0% of the job for 0% of the occupations. Now, Google wasn't really focusing, at least not solely on this. They had a business, but a group co-founded by Elon Musk and Sam Altman and a few others, OpenAI, decided to focus exclusively on transformers. They made version 1, version 2, version 3. And so by the time we get to the middle part of 2022 with GPT-3, we have progressed along the horizontal axis. This is starting to impact potentially more and more occupations, but the percentage of the job it can do is still fixed at 0. It's only a theoretical thing. Until last day of November, first day of December, we got ChatGPT, a new kind of interface we could actually apply to tasks we've got right now. And boom, like a rocket ship, we're sitting right there. In other words, 4 in 10 US jobs can be about 30% automated. Now, personally, I'm using the actual language from the report, but I think automated is the wrong way to think about this. This doesn't do something independently of us humans. It's a tool to make us more productive, more efficient, more effective. So I'd like to change their lingo to be productivity improved. We can improve productivity for 4 in 10 of our people. Oh, and I should say out of any 10 people, 5 of them are driving the trucks or running the machines or the so-called essential workers. This didn't apply to those folks. It applies to knowledge workers. So what this is saying, out of 10, 5 are knowledge workers. 4 out of those 5 are salespeople, are marketing people, are HR people, those of us that are leaders or managers in our organization. We should be using this technology. So that gives you a sense. Do the math on your corporate headcount or business headcount. Multiply by 40%, or if you got to count on your knowledge workers, multiply by 80%, you got a sense of what we're talking about here. That is your leadership imperative. Now, you would put this in the same category as PCs. Remember when those came into business, 1984, browsers, 94, smartphones, 2007, blockchain, 2009. And now we have ChatGPT in 2022. And I think you can, maybe most of us ignore blockchain for a bit longer. But hey, when you come back and look at these slides 10 years from now, if I didn't have that on the list, you would wonder why. But that's a pretty short list over the last 4 decades of really big developments in business. And you certainly wouldn't do business with or wouldn't hire an employee who came in and said, well, I don't use PCs. Yes, it's equally crazy that you wouldn't use ChatGPT, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to use the term ChatGPT as we dive into this as a generic. Kleenex, I'm using it as a generic. What I really meant was facial tissues, right? So just bear with me as I use ChatGPT generically because I want to introduce a few others for you here. Now, ChatGPT is in its 4.0 version. I think that's a terrible product name because it's not the first version of 4, it's the second version, and this is rather confusing. It's not an O, it's not 4.0, it's O as in the word omni. What OpenAI is trying to convey here is don't think about this as just text anymore. It's images. There are beta testing videos. It can speak and listen. It can start to read our emotions and moods. It is an omni-dimensional chatbot. I did ask ChatGPT what it thought of the name. And it said, well, that could lead to some confusion there, Dave, because typically 4.0 is the initial version of the fourth gen. How about instead 4.1, 4 Pro, 4X? But apparently no one there in San Francisco at OpenAI actually asked their own product about a good name. Now, the bad naming continues because they just came out with a new release, right? Version 5, right? Or 4.2? No, it's O1. So I don't know what's going on with their naming person, but the rest of that company's pretty sharp. Now, Microsoft has something called Copilot, and they just had $13 billion lying around and decided that it was better off given to OpenAI in exchange for the code. So what you're looking at here between ChatGPT and Copilot is essentially two identical twins. So why are they different, right? If you use both these products, and you'll probably use both these products, why do they vary? Same reason two human identical twins vary. They may be born with the same exact DNA, they may be equally intelligent, but they have had different experiences in the world, different friends, they've studied different things, their personalities have evolved as they've been alive. So these two are equally smart, but essentially identical twins. Now, it's funny. Usually, Microsoft copies whatever Apple is doing, but in this case, Apple copied what Microsoft is doing. So you might have heard recently that Apple has announced something called Apple Intelligence. It's going to be available with iOS 18.1, not the one that you can get right now, but 0.1 this fall. And it is powered by ChatGPT. So they've licensed the same technology. Siri is essentially getting a brain transplant. And your phone is about to take a quantum leap forward like you have not seen in 10 years. So sometime during the fall or next spring, carve out some serious amount of time to relearn your iPhone. Now, bear with me if you're an Android person. Sort of bad news if you're an Apple customer. Apple Intelligence needs a heck of a lot of processing power, and the only older iPhone it works on is the iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max. Now, if you're an Apple shareholder, this is great news because everybody has to buy a new iPhone 16. So I got mine, but I still don't have Apple Intelligence until they do 18.1 release. So you'll see some amazing steps forward. Now, whole different code base, but another transformer comes from Google. They saw they got leapfrogged. It took them a year to catch up, but they came out with Gemini. You probably heard some others along the way, Bard, Lambda, etc. But Gemini in December, and they're back in the game. And we also have another cool one from a startup called Anthropic. It's now Claude version 3. Now, some people from here at OpenAI decided they didn't like the direction of that company. They went and started Anthropic. They prevailed on a guy named Sam Bankman-Fried, used to run FTX, the crypto exchange, that he wasn't really utilizing that $500 million of his depositors' money. How about give it to us? And he did. So that's where the single biggest part of FTX funds went. They did amazing things with it. Google saw that, hedging their bets. They gave them $300 million. Amazon has come in here recently with $2.4 billion. And yes, Sam Bankman-Fried is in prison because you can't do that with your depositors' money. But recently, the failed FTX has prevailed upon the bankruptcy court to let them sell 2/3 of their Anthropic stock in a private transaction, and investors are now getting 118% of their deposits back. I don't think that's ever happened in the history of bankruptcy before. And of course, the failed FTX still owns a good deal of Anthropic and some other assets. Of course, Sam remains in prison. And then we've got, as a fifth choice, something called Perplexity. Okay, Dave, too many choices. Which one? Well, the Wall Street Journal has attempted to answer that question for us with this article, The Great AI Challenge. We test 5 top bots on useful everyday skills. And according to the Wall Street Journal, at least at the end of May, the winner is Perplexity, followed by ChatGPT, followed by Gemini, Claude, and Copilot. But if you dive into this, what you see is it entirely depends on what you're trying to do. So they tested a whole bunch of different kind of things, and you see that Perplexity, while they called it best overall, isn't the best for most things, nor is any of these things. They all score first or worst, just depending on the task they're applied to. And hey, there's Copilot in fifth place, but that was last May. With the advent of O1, which also goes to Microsoft, my guess is if Wall Street Journal redid this ranking right now, it'd probably look something like this: ChatGPT, then Copilot, then everybody else. But here's the bottom line. What we're looking at is very much like a five-horse race. And while at that time you can see Copilot back there was in fifth place, it was only half a length behind ChatGPT, which is barely a nose behind Perplexity. Anybody could win, and the race gets rerun every day, and anybody else could win. Bottom line is you can't make a bad choice. So I think what will probably govern your choice of chatbot is your current vendor relationships. If you're a Microsoft shop, the answer is Copilot. If you're a Google shop, the answer is Gemini, and you'll probably find occasional uses for one or more of the other ones. So you're looking at my image here, which thank you, ChatGPT, for generating a neck and neck five-horse race with a dark horse back there. What the heck is the llama doing? So this is one to keep an eye on. And by the way, some of you are saying, isn't Elon Musk doing something at XAI? Yeah, Grok. So there's other ones out there, and there's some coming from China like Baidu's Ernie. So I'm not trying to be all encompassing here, but Llama, super interesting because Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, etc., is making Llama available open source for free. So to the extent you might want to incorporate large language model technology into a product you build at some point in the future, I think many of us are likely to choose Llama. So hey, capitalism is a great thing. We got lots of choices. Now, let's get down to the core point of the webinar today. What do we do with this? So let's start to dive in. So chatgpt.com, but of course, if I say ChatGPT and you're a Microsoft shop, please just translate to Copilot or translate to Gemini or whatever your favorite is, generic term. But here is my chat box. I just have to type any words or phrase or question, or sometimes we call these prompts right there, and away we go. So let's pretend for a second. I am the director of HR for Acme Corporation. I receive an email one day from one of my employees accusing another employee of sexual harassment. I begin my HR process. I meet with the players. I counsel everybody on confidentiality, but sooner or later, I've got to generate some content. So I'm going to show you a very specific content generation use case. But if you think about it, we all create content every day. Salespeople responding to an important email, or creating a PowerPoint for tomorrow's prospect, or marketing is blogging, or something's broken on the website and they need some help creating better HTML code, or we're creating a job description, or whatever. We all create content all the time. This is the number one use case for knowledge workers, and probably all of us do it many times a day. And that's when you should think chatbot, large language model. Now, I'm going to do it in the sexual harassment scenario, but you can do it for whatever your content generation task is. Now, I've moved the box to the top. I type my question, and you'll notice how different this is from what a Google query might have looked like. I say to ChatGPT, I have an employee that is sexually harassing another employee. And yeah, I should have stuck in the word allegedly. Okay, so let's get this right. Based on our employee handbook, wait a second, it knows a lot of stuff, 1.3 trillion internet words and parameters, but doesn't have our employee handbook. But here's the first really big idea. So often, the most valuable things you'll ever do with these chatbots involve giving it something that you've got to help answer whatever task you've tasked it with. And so I open up my Microsoft Word document. This is our employment agreement. I go to section 5, about 1,000 words. I copy and paste this whole section that deals with all prohibited behaviors, harassment behaviors in the workplace, not just sexual harassment, but this is the relevant part of our employment agreement. And it's always better to provide more detail. I'm in Pennsylvania. You're in Washington, or wherever you might happen to be, Texas, California. You know, these states have different policies and procedures. And even if you're the director of HR, you might not have read something that happened yesterday in terms of an update. ChatGPT has, and the federal policies, and the Society for HR Management.org website with all the best practices. So this knows a lot of stuff. Be more specific. So this 1,000 words looks nothing like your typical Google query. And 2 seconds later, boom, got my draft. Dear harassing employee, I am writing to inform you. Now, we're not going to send it to the dear harassing employee. I'm doing something intentional here. I think it is a good idea to assume a healthy paranoia when dealing, especially with ChatGPT, and we'll talk about levels of safety here in a second, about potential information bleed. You really don't need to put in the names of the players, right? So I am going to substitute, once I've got this back on my computer in Microsoft Word, Pat's name. But notice, it's not doing a traditional, fill in the template kind of thing. When it read Section 5 of our employment agreement, it could see we are Acme Corporation. It appropriately used that. And while most of this is uniquely generated, it's never existed quite in this exact form before in the history of words or humans, it read my Section 5. And it found one paragraph in Section 5 that was appropriate to extract because that was about sexual harassment. And then the rest of this is uniquely created. We come to the end. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, your name here. Once it's back in Word, I plug in my name, Dave Nelson, my title, Director of HR, Acme Corporation. I just finished in 2 minutes what might have taken 2 hours. But I'm not finished with this job yet because this is only an initial draft. Here's the thing. These chatbots can make mistakes, and there's so much stuff your domain knowledge, that they don't know. They don't know the actual players. They don't know any history. I certainly didn't provide it. They don't know the corporate culture. So I still have a lot of value add. And in fact, I need to go through every single word here because here's the rule about AI-generated content. It's not the manufacturer or the service provider responsible for it. It did what it did based on your request. The providers have no liability for what their tool did. We do. So we as the users, and this is different from every other kind of product or service liability, we as the users are responsible for the safe and ethical and correct application of this technology. So you better read every single word, make it your own. Now, let's get into some cautions as we go, and don't worry, we're going to keep going deeper here. Be paranoid about data compromise and privacy and intellectual property and customer data and financial data, at least until we know more. The very oldest of these products, at least how long they've been available to the public, it's not even a 2-year-old yet. So we don't know everything that can go wrong or where the possible weaknesses are. So healthy paranoia. And in fact, my guess is even if you're a Microsoft or Google shop and you use their core tools, sometimes your employees are going to use ChatGPT. This time you should read the privacy policies. Per ChatGPT or OpenAI, when you use our services for individuals, we may use your content to train our, can I translate that for you? You don't tweak the settings, we will use your content to train our models. That seems like a bad idea. So how about 4 clicks? Only takes 15 seconds. So number one, you can see we're on chatgpt.com in the upper right, your account. You click it and it brings down, you can see where I put the number 2, settings. Click that. And number 3, data controls, only 4 clicks. Once you've activated data controls, improve the model for everyone. Notice it's defaulted to on. You want that to be off. It's not going to hurt the way the product runs. It just makes you and your people safer. They don't train on the data they're receiving from you. Now, this brings up an interesting point, and I want to shift to Copilot and Word for a second. We need a generative AI use policy before too many more days go by, right? So that everyone knows how to use these tools and which of the tools are right. So let's use Word to create our Gen AI use policy. If you think about it, Copilot has been out there. It's read everybody's policy that's published. It's read all the websites on advice on this. It's already done the research. So let's go. Here I am in Word. Looks exactly like the Word you have, but I have paid my incremental $30 per month to get Copilot in the Office tools. So our Copilot, or sorry, I should say our Office licenses have generally cost us about $100 a year Get ready for $460 a year. Now you can see why Microsoft's market cap is over 3 trillion and this 13 billion is probably the best investment in the history of capitalism. But now that I've paid my $30 incremental second license on top of Office, got a little icon right there. Click that little icon and it will activate Copilot in overlay mode. So click. I'm going to try to zoom in and out on the screen so you can read these things clearly in Zoom. So describe what you'd like to write, says Copilot, including notes, outline, etc. Notice there's also a button to reference various files that might be useful in this task, or there's another way to activate Copilot. And once you think about it, software, if you're paying attention to it and looking at it in any detail, most software has 5 ways to do the same thing. So you get to choose which of these modes you prefer, but if you click on the Copilot in the upper right, it generates a side panel. And one thing I want to point out, mostly it's the same, but there is one important thing about the side panel view. Notice the first icon in the chat box. People ask me all the time, Dave, what's the best resource to learn how to use Copilot? And I know it's a super meta answer, but my answer is use Copilot to learn Copilot. Just click that icon. When you click that icon, you see it says View Prompts. Click the prompts, and they built a whole ton of prompts into Word to give you and your people ideas of what you can possibly do. So you actually just play with the tool. The learning is built right into it. This is really cool. And any question that maybe they haven't defined a prompt for, just ask Copilot, how do I? It's sort of amazing. So use Copilot to learn how to use Copilot. Now, we're talking about generating an AI use policy. So let's go. Here's an everyday use case. And these are all going to play at actual speed. I have not accelerated or in any way deleted changed the response time. So I'm going to click on the icon to go into the pop-up mode. So you see me moving my mouse. It just popped up. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can read it. Draft with Copilot. And I say, good morning. I'd like to develop a generative AI use policy for my company. Kindly take a first cut at a draft, then I'll provide comments and direction. And then I'm going to click the generate button. So let's zoom back out again and let's watch how this thing goes. So the generate button's right there. Let me get my mouse over it and click it. So click, and you'll see the document starting to come together in the background. It's happening. It's now scroll below the screen, working on it, working on it, working on it. About 10 seconds and boom, done. Now, I look at this document, and I decide on first glance, before I've even chosen to keep it, let's say it's maybe a little bit too legalistic. And the bottom line is if my team can't read and understand this thing, it's pretty simple and straightforward, well, we're not going to get what we want in terms of use. And so I'm not going to click on the button to keep this draft. Instead, I'm going to provide some follow-on directions. So next, I say, by clicking over there in that box, I say, and let's zoom in here so you can read it clearly. I say, and notice how conversational this is. Let's keep the language relatively simple and straightforward so that our team members can read, understand, and apply it. I mean, I'm talking to it essentially the same way I would talk to somebody who works for me or a consultant I'm working with or my, labor law attorney or whatever. Talk to it like a human. You already have the skills to do this. You do not in any way need to change how you normally interact. Now I click the little forward button over there at the right, this time to generate a new draft. Now you'll see it's refining. You'll see it start to paint in the background there, the refined draft. It's below the page now, working on it, working on it, working on it. Done. And this time looks good. It's a lot closer, simple bullets, pretty clear language. I mean, there's so many ways you can customize this. You can say, make it at a 6th grade reading level, or make it a little bit more humorous, or make it a little more serious, or as you like. It's really good. It takes 2 seconds to 10 seconds to do these tone changes. I'm good with this one. So click the button to keep. Now I've got my first draft. Think about that the old way. You would have had to go out and research this or hire an expert or what have you. Now, let's pretend somebody wanders by my office and says, hey, Dave, I see you working on a Gen AI use policy. I got one too that I got from one of my friends in another company. What do you think of this one versus that one? Now, the old way we would have done this in Microsoft Word, and I just want to illustrate the changes in behavior and actually the benefits of doing so. The old way is I would have popped up my 2 documents in Word. So I got the policy I've just generated. I've got this one I got from another company. I click into the Tools menu in Microsoft Word. I select where it says Track Changes. I pick to compare documents. And voila, I get this diff marked thing. Here's my problem with the diff mark thing. If you're a lawyer, this is great, but for all of the rest of us, I don't need to know every comma change, every format change, if I put in an extra space or corrected a word, and every single detail is called out here. I look at this and I say, that must have been designed by a team of monkeys. Now, my college roommate ultimately became president of Microsoft Office Products Division, so I have access to things that other people don't have. So I reached out to him to get a photo of the actual product team that designed Microsoft's diff marking, and it was a team of monkeys. Thank you, Copilot, for my little joke. Now, here's the new way with Copilot. So I go here and I type my question. So we've zoomed in. I say, please compare our generative AI use policy, the document I just created, and now notice the reference of file, right? You can always give it stuff, and this is one of the really valuable use cases. So I either click reference a file, or nice shortcut you're going to get really familiar with, just type a slash. Slash triggers the file picker. So up here I'm going to say slash, and then notice it brings up recent files. And if I didn't find what I want, now this third one is exactly what I'm looking for, but if I didn't find what I want, I type the first letter, second letter, and it's just matching right off of my PC or Mac, off of our OneDrive, off of our SharePoint, right? So it's accessing files. But in this case, all I have to do is click from the recent list. I select the company SGen AI use policy. You see that populate in there. I finish my sentence and let me know what, if anything, is missing from the first document. And then I'm going to, again, tell it to generate, and voila. Hey, the missing elements in your policy compared to the other one, Dave. You did not address specifically approved AI tools. You did not address use of company data. This is like way more valuable than the team of monkeys for most of us. I love this kind of approach. It's really getting down to the core of what we would care about as humans. And again, maybe the lawyers need the other version, but the rest of us, what we really need to do is understand the content level changes and the principles. Continuing, I say, please draft sections addressing approved AI tools and review of AI generated content, because I decide I want to add those in, what I missed initially. Based on slash, I select the second document for use in slash the first document, and I get my nice draft of 2 different paragraphs there. And after putting those into the document, I say draft a message to my coworkers asking for their comments on this document by Friday. And of course, it knows the context of what we're working on. This is just a really productive way to do so many different things. So when I said earlier, 4 in 10 jobs, specifically the knowledge worker jobs, can be potentially 30% productivity improved. Not that you need to try to capture all that on day one, but over the course of the next 12 months, we can learn this stuff. We can evolve our processes. That's your leadership imperative. That's what is to be had, and the number will continue to rise. Now, I wasn't quite done with, that was a detour back to our sexual harassment scenario. I say next, please draft a message to the person submitting the complaint so they know I'm taking action. Boom, I didn't have to re-remind it where we left off. And then, and this is what I would call sort of systems thinking. It's really good at a different kind of use case. Anything you need that's processes, procedures, checklists, agendas, job descriptions, it's great at all that. And so, in summary on this first example, if I'm director of HR at Acme Corporation, what I just showed you is super productive. But let me also point out what could go wrong. Let's pretend I'm director of anything else and I don't really understand HR policy, so I don't have the ability. I like to think of ChatGPT as my summer intern. And if you did have a summer intern, even if they're super smart, super productive, super fast, you would never share their content with the world without some kind of review. So if I were director of anything else, let's say director of engineering, and don't really understand HR, so I can't provide the proper review and oversight on something like ChatGPT, I would consider it extremely risky to do what I just showed you. So that use case makes a lot of sense if it's your domain, HR, It doesn't make very much sense. In fact, it's a pretty big risk if it's not your domain. Hey, Kelly, I'm just looking up at you. If we got any chats, it'd be a great time to jump in. And anyone who has any questions, feel free to chat them to Kelly. I'll address them. And again, we'll provide you a mechanism when we're done. So if there's something on your mind, let's make sure we do chat it to Kelly before we shut down the Zoom bridge.
You
How are we
know,
doing there, Kelly?
Dave, there was one that I wasn't going to interrupt because it was kind of comedic, but it came in through the Q&A and they asked if you use please and thank you when.
I do. I do. You probably noticed the please and thank you here. And the reason I'm using please and thank you is because well, first of all, my mom told me to, right? So I'm just bringing my same behaviors as if I were working with another person. But I will tell you, the second reason is I actually think it creates a far better experience. What you'll see is sort of a mirroring back towards you. How you behave to ChatGPT is also how it behaves back to you. And so it's just much more friendly, supportive, humorous because I interact with it in that way than, sort of mirrors your personality. So it's just more fun. Some people like to name it. Hey, ChatGPT, I'm going to call you Sydney from now on, okay? And then you're Sydney, as you like. And the last thing I'll point out is this is a continuous learning neural network. So at one level, it is evolving through our interactions. And I just think it's a better idea to try to do my part to lead it to a better place by being a good human. So three reasons there for you,
Right.
Kelly. But please, thank you. I'm very encouraging, and you're just gonna, no matter whether it has an impact on how the technology evolves or not. I think it does, but that's only an opinion. It's gonna be a lot more fun.
So I'm going to condense a few questions that came in kind of rapid fire here too.
Please do.
And they speak a little bit to security. So are all of these tools secure and safe to use? Another one was the same question, but it asked about, someone noted that Copilot is really good at ferreting out information in your Microsoft tenant. So what are your thoughts about it gaining access to maybe inappropriate access to HR information or other data that might exist in your network? And then the third, I'm just going to sandwich this on top of it because it speaks to Copilot. I don't have Copilot embedded in my Word. You addressed this, but we should go back and mention it one more time. Is that an additional expense? And the answer there is
Yeah,
yes, it is an
it
additional
is. It's
expense.
an
It's
additional
$30 per month
$30
paid
per month
annually.
license. Yeah, so go on to your Microsoft, admin account or have your IT
EXP
person.
Technical can help you with that.
There you go,
I'm
Kelly.
sorry,
Call Kelly.
your IT person. Yeah,
All right,
this
perfect.
isn't a sales pitch, but we can help you with Microsoft
Yeah,
licensing. So that for
I
sure we
will
can help
tell
you with.
you
But to
if
the
you
other security
I will get to
questions
the other
too.
security ones because there's a couple interesting questions, internal and external there. But I will mention, in case we don't get to this today, Microsoft does allow you to use Copilot for free, unlimited use on one app. And that app is on their Microsoft Edge browser. So if you have Internet Explorer, please delete that straight away. That's the old one. Get on Edge, and there's a lot to love about Edge, including free Copilot on that. But for all the other apps, you are going to have to pay an incremental license. Copilot across the Office tools, that's $30 per month as a license. So
And
security,
and that's a great way, if you don't mind me interjecting, that's a great way
please.
to learn how to get familiar with Copilot by using it in Edge where it's free.
Exactly. And then you're going to want it everywhere else. And as you saw in that document compare example, and that was just one example of how things get better with Copilot compared to, the way we used to do things. And where Microsoft is doing a beautiful job of taking the core technology and integrating it into the things we actually do with our Office documents. But to keep it relatively short, I think you are really secure using Microsoft Copilot compared to ChatGPT, even with the controls I showed you to set, because, and you will notice this, when you start to use the Copilot, even Microsoft Edge, there will be a message. Your chats and data are protected in this conversation. Microsoft partitions what you're doing in a way that's very similar to how they partition your Office 365 documents from mine, right? They're really good at keeping all our stuff separate and safe and secure. And so I actually think you are materially safer using Copilot as opposed to ChatGPT, even though at the core they're the same technology. Microsoft's doing some beautiful partitioning. Internally, as you have more and more people access Copilot in Word and the other Office tools, you do have to, from an IT perspective, be very careful about document permissions because all of a sudden people can ask Copilot, and if it's got open access to, last year's bonus data, boom, there's an answer. And so there are some significant IT, gotchas or issues when you start to activate Copilot. Now, in a lot of ways, this is super valuable. Hey, Copilot, in Teams, tell me everywhere I was at mentioned today, right? While I was off site. And then you get, something very nice from the channels you subscribe to. But we do have to make sure, especially from document permissions internally, that the right people have access to the right things. So those are great questions, real issues for sure.
It's just further incentive to be following best practices to implementing the appropriate controls. I mean, these are issues regardless. It's just that Copilot is a very good detective that can find and ferret out data when you need it to.
Right. Whereas people might have not gone to the work or might not have the skills to do what Copilot is able to do at the at the request. Now,
Another question came in,
go ahead, Cal.
if you don't mind. This
Yeah.
might be a quick question, but aside from actual version updates, have you, Dave, witnessed AI chatbots improve their ability to interpret or accurately answer your prompts over time with your use of it? I mean, I think what the question is, do you notice that it's learning aside from being updated? Do you notice that it's getting better as you work with it longer?
Well, it's getting way better, but probably the majority reason is because the providers of this technology are training it on more data and parameters. So if you use the original 3.5, it couldn't generate or interact with you regarding images. It was really bad at math. And, it's really closed so much of the gap in terms of things we need to do in our businesses since then. So I've been on it 3.5, 4, 4.0, now I'm on 0.1. And again, pardon the stupid naming, but also Copilot since February, I think, and they are definitely improving. Part of it is because of our interactions, but I think more of it is because they're being trained on more and more data on the back end. They learn from the internet, our websites, Wikipedia, Reddit, etc. Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones made provisions for these things to read the Wall Street Journal, so they're learning from all of these sources. One last slide on where we were going. You certainly don't want to end up like these folks, not reviewing the content that's generated for you. Humiliated lawyers fined $5,000 for submitting ChatGPT hallucinations in court. The attorney simply had it draft a brief, glanced at it, mentioned 5 real judges. Now, sometimes it gets creative when we don't want it to, and the researchers don't really know why. We call these hallucinations. The judge passed it to the defense team that didn't recognize the cited case law, tasked some associates to go to the law library to look it up. Those cases didn't exist. They complained to the judge. The judge fined the lawyer $5,000 and made him write personal apology letters to the 5 judges he cited with the 5 fake cases. In your handwriting, please. Do not use ChatGPT to generate these apologies. Yeah, how cool is that? So the lawyer in his defense said, I heard about this new site, which I falsely assumed was like a super search engine. Yeah, I'd like to complete the sentence for that gentleman. So I used its output without checking it because I'm a lazy, reckless idiot. So be a lazy,
Indeed.
reckless idiot. Yeah.
Actually, that brings up 2 questions on my side too, because one of the advantages when Copilot first became available is it helps you with the hallucination problem because it has source attribution. And maybe I haven't been maybe I haven't been interacting with other tools quite as much, but that's one thing that you can use to link to citations as reference material. Seemed like there was another question, but you're nodding, so I'll just stop there and see if you have comments on that.
No, I want to address that. So let me make sure we cover 2 things in our remaining 15 minutes. And anyone watching has probably figured out that we weren't going to end this at 1 p.m. It said 1 a.m. in case you weren't reading the meeting notice carefully. We could talk about this all day.
Well, I got to order pizza if that's the case.
Exactly. I want to back up and show you the user interface on ChatGPT, and the same exact point applies to Microsoft Edge Copilot. So I was zoomed in when I was showing you the content that we were generating for the sexual harassment response, but I want to zoom back out. This part of the product is called the conversation history. Now, if you're using Edge, it's going to be on the other side of the screen, but this is the history. It's on the left with ChatGPT. It's on the right with Copilot. Super important, because if you simply click in to begin a chat, you open up your browser, you open up the app, it pretends as if it knows more or less nothing about you, only some very general stuff. And so if you want to pick up on this sexual harassment issue, say 6 months later, Well, you're going to have to upload section 5 of your policy again. So you don't want to just start by clicking on ChatGPT or starting into a conversation. You want to go find the last time you had that conversation in your history. Sexual harassment policy, click. That reloads everything that we are talking about last time. So it doesn't keep everything in its brain for context, but it does keep everything in memory for access. You have to trigger it, but that allows you to resume instantly without reestablishing context. And you do not experience that effect with people, right? We always have to remind ourselves where we left off. This remembers better than you do. So to me, an effective part of using this technology is being organized about these histories. They become very valuable, and you might even want to go create some. I love using this for helping me understand how to use a product or other kind of tech support issues. Hey, ChatGPT, I'd like to tell you about all my technology and apps, and I describe what I use, and then I just go into that one conversation to get answers. Or I'd like you to learn to write like me. Here's 50 writing samples, and now I can say to it in that conversation, again, these would be different conversations in here, I can say to it, please draft a blog post on the top 4 trends in artificial intelligence, and make sure you're in my style. It looks at the other things you've written and mimics your style. It's a fabulous mimic. So use it in those ways. You'll find as you work this history, it gets better and better. You accumulate more and more detail there. And I would say there aren't very many features yet here with respect to managing your history. So you're going to have to be sort of organized and strategic. And my guess is that OpenAI, Microsoft, et cetera, are going to bring us a lot more features on those histories. Now, I want to jump down, since the topic came up, to Edge. And let's talk about the Edge browser. And essentially, if I say Microsoft, it's like I'm saying OpenAI or ChatGPT. These companies are really joined at the hip. There's a technology flow going back and forth. Of course, Microsoft's putting a lot of feature functionality on top of it with their integration. Interestingly, Microsoft is even entitled to essentially half of OpenAI profits. They don't want to own the company, I guess, for antitrust reasons. But the code that runs ChatGPT is the code that runs Copilot. So every time you see OpenAI take a giant step forward, like they did 3 weeks ago, that means Microsoft has taken a giant step forward. Now, let me show you 2 things with respect to Edge. And these are both, I think, pretty exciting deltas relative to ChatGPT. So when you first open up the Edge browser, it looks pretty much like a browser, but as we saw with Word, there's a way to trigger Copilot there in the upper right. And number 1, the screen splits, and number 2, a message. Your personal company data are protected in this chat. That is a huge win. Now, as I type a question here, and I don't mean for you to read this, I just want to show you a little bit of the interface. It has an answer. When it answers, it cites sources, numbering those sources, and you see those numbers appearing throughout the chatbot response. This is like, yay, Microsoft. It goes way beyond what ChatGPT did. And to the extent that we suffer from the potential of these things to make stuff up, this really helps with the oversight because we very quickly can check sources. In fact, that's where the split screen comes in. If I want to click on the second source there, I just click that source, bam, there it is in the side-by-side window. So I've got the web here, I got the chatbot there. That, I think, is fabulous. And you'll also notice that there are suggested just below the sources next questions, right? It's even using its AI to help you figure out what you might want to access or ask next, which I think is also a big win. So a quick summary of Microsoft Edge, which again, you get all of the features for free, whereas with OpenAI, if you're using ChatGPT very much, you quickly bump into the $20 a month paywall. So you get the features for free. It's certainly a good way to start to become familiar with the Microsoft technology before maybe you get that incremental Office license. Number 2, your chats and data are better protected here even after you did the settings that I pointed out you should do with ChatGPT. My thought is, even if you're Microsoft shop mostly using this, sometimes people are going to use ChatGPT, and I'll give you a reason here in a second. But number 3, the source citing is just tremendously valuable, so much so I think that ChatGPT is going to have to significantly improve how they do this. And then number 4, and this is maybe one more, in fact, this is probably the number 1 reason I come over to Edge. we were just using ChatGPT a minute ago. ChatGPT is knowledge guardrailed or cut off to not interact with you about anything that's happened this year. So you sometimes ask it something and it'll say, I can't tell you because my knowledge cutoff is December 2023. Go check a current source. So Microsoft is playing a different game. They're running their code completely live with no knowledge cutoff. So you can ask Edge, Copilot in Edge, about something that happened yesterday, and it can answer those questions. And so that's often a reason that even if I'm using ChatGPT, I may come over here to Copilot in Edge. And it's worth understanding the two different games that are being played here. OpenAI is a relatively small company. They're working to protect their reputation. They don't want to make any kind of mistakes. And so they've got all the data from 2024, but they're still testing it, making sure the chatbot doesn't do anything bad as a result. And they do periodically move the knowledge cutoff forward. Microsoft's game is different. Oh, let's see. Google has 92% market share. Bing has 3% market share. Caution to the wind. And so they're running this thing completely live, which is a real benefit to us. It's unlikely for you to do anything crazy, but across their user base, every once in a while it does, and you get to read about that on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. But Microsoft already has proven its reputation. And by the way, version 1, do you expect perfection? In fact, that would be a good expectation setting right here. These products are new. The oldest one isn't even 2. Edge has not been available for, or I should say, Copilot has not been available for even 1 year to any company. And so keep your expectations in check. When something doesn't quite work, try it a different way, or ask it why it didn't work that way and is there a different way to do it, or check back tomorrow because it will be improved. Now, ChatGPT can handle 32 times more input than what Microsoft permits with Copilot in Edge, and so sometimes I use it for that reason. The thing I am most excited about with respect to Microsoft, and I'm a longtime Office user, is the integration with all these other tools. So Microsoft Word, well, you already saw it working in there and got some of the benefits of that. I'm not a great writer. I'm an engineer by training, so I like to write myself, and so I'm writing myself, but I often just consult it on the fly. I was writing a sentence. There are several other great features too, including, and I just said to Copilot, is this the correct use of commas? This time I got it right. So yeah, that is the correct use. But here's the thing that might be more valuable to you. If you're already a good writer, it knows all the features of the tools. Hey, how do I insert a table of contents into this document? Or simply ask it, could you insert a table of contents to this document? How cool is that? Now, in Word, that might seem to be limited use because you probably know how to use Word pretty well. But think about Excel. Excel has 500 functions. Most of us know how to do 10 or 20 of them. How good are you with pivot tables or conditional formatting or whatever?
I'm not. You're asking me directly, but go on.
Yeah, my son took a 6-month course in college. He's an expert in Excel, but most of us aren't. How do I insert a table of contents? Well, the similar questions in Excel, you get killer answers. Now, it's also interesting. Once you have the data in Excel, you can ask questions like this. Which 5 customers are the least profitable? And if the core data is in Excel, it may well develop some kind of pivot table and then some kind of chart to give you an answer. That's pretty cool. PowerPoint, literally, I asked it one day, I said, what are the top 4 trends in the AI industry? Please add a slide. Boom! It went out and researched the trends. It put them in that nice bullet format. And the image you see in the background, it created uniquely for me. And that's 2 seconds, right? Why would you ever make your own PowerPoints when it can do a beautiful draft for you like that? Outlook, amazing things you can do. Hey, create a rule so all incoming messages from this particular customer go into this particular folder. Rules have been in Outlook for a long time, but most people have never used them, and they're incredibly valuable. The reason we didn't use them is they're so hard to set up. So have Copilot set them up for you. Teams, I already mentioned one example. Hey, give me all the app mentions for me while I was off-site all day. And of course, all the features with respect to Microsoft storage. Now, I do have a comment, again, just to set expectations. I think that Copilot works really well in Word, PowerPoint, Teams, and with the file management. If you think about it, Excel is really complex as an application, and Outlook is pretty complex as an application. And I would just say keep your expectations in check with respect to Copilot in those two, Excel and Outlook. Now, those two I am the most excited about. That is where the most value is going to come from, but they're just not quite there yet. Last thought I have for you is this. There's a lot going on. You see new announcements every single week about new products. I discovered a tools directory. It's called AIScout.net. AIScout.net. It's a tools directory that last time I looked profiles 1,777 different AI tools. I want AI to do what? And it will start to point you to the tools in that space. So for sure, we're going to use the large language models. We're going to use Copilot, probably integrated with our tools. But there's probably some other things out there that can help with sales or marketing or whatever you see as your top business challenge. And the next 12 months is a time of curious exploring. So try some things out. Get some people, some early pioneers to explore. You're going to fail fast on a few things or find some things aren't ready for prime time, but you'll learn a lot by doing this. And about a year from now, you can probably harvest some of those learnings in new processes for, well, potentially, according to Goldman Sachs, 30% productivity gain. All right, we are straight up 1 o'clock Pacific time here, Kelly. So let's declare victory here, but let me suggest this. I'm happy to stay around and answer any questions right now. But if you didn't get a question answered today, please chat it to Kelly. Kelly and I are going to work together, and we will get you written answers. Of course, I'll be using Copilot to generate these for you. But maybe, but we will work together to follow up with a document of, FAQ, questions and answers on anything that we didn't address today. Anything else we should talk about before we sign off here, Kelly?
I think I'm gonna throw one quick one at you. So
Do
where
it.
do you
Do
see
it.
the future? I have my ideas of where this is all headed, but if we're a year from now or 2 or 5 years from now, what are we talking about?
Well, these models are going to evolve. We think they're going to get roughly 10 times better every 2 years in terms of their capabilities. Now, consider for a second, we've gone through this phenomenal exponential called Moore's Law. Our processors have been doubling in capacity or processing power every 2 years. And so we've gone from a supercomputer weighing 2.75 tons, costing $17 million, to a phone that fits in your pocket or a watch you can wear on your wrist that has 2 to 4 times more power. So we've been going on this 2x every 2 years journey. What we're talking about is going to evolve at a 10x every 2 years journey. So get on that curve now because it's bending away. It's going to be harder later to learn. And I think ultimately we're some really interesting developments. There's some research going on right now. How do we marry large language models with the machines so we can talk to the machines to get them to do what we want? And of course, there's many other flavors of AI coming along, like autonomous vehicles. So I was in Scottsdale, Arizona in May. Waymo, which
My
is part of
hometown.
Google, is completely autonomous there. So you can, with your app, call an autonomous vehicle, you climb in, and they're no longer restricted to just the city streets or surface streets. I was on 101 going around Phoenix, and boom, there's 65 miles an hour Waymo next to me. So we're seeing AI come into our vehicles and so on. So I guess I would just say prepare for AI everywhere and it getting a lot better, a lot faster than what we maybe have experienced with previous technologies.
Awesome. Well, Dave Nelson, we're running a little bit over, but I wanted to thank you so much for joining. I from the comments, I can tell that our audience is very appreciative. To everyone in attendance, you can email or chat questions to me in the closing minutes here. We will respond. We'll follow up with answers to questions that have been unanswered, and I will be in touch soon with the recording. And I think with that, Dave, again, thank you so much for joining us.
And thanks everybody for joining us. Good luck with your new super productive summer intern.